Hello everyone. Tonight, I've got a batch of chilling tales to share with you. But before we dive in, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me keep creating even better content. Now, sit back, relax, and join me as we embark on this eerie journey together. I was juggling 2 jobs during my college summer, working the diner in town until midnight, then waiting tables at a 24-hour roadside cafe on the highway. The pay was decent, but the hours were brutal. Some nights, I'd leave the cafe well past 2 a.m., dragging myself to my battered sedan and crawling behind the wheel, half asleep. One sweltering July night, I finished my shift at 3:12 a.m. I stepped outside into the humid, insect-thick air. Across the parking lot, the neon sign flickered above the cafe's vacant marquee. My car sat under a flickering street lamp hood, glinting with heat. I unlocked the door and slid inside, exhaustion weighing heavily on my eyelids. As I started the engine, something caught my eye, a figure stepping out of the shadows by the roadside stand where the cafe's neon menu once glowed. I rubbed my eyes. A man, or what looked like a man, stood under the weak light. He wore a faded clown suit, emerald green with purple polka dots, oversized buttons the size of saucers. His face was painted stark white. His lips were a bullet red slash curling upward, and his eyes, ringed in jet black, stared straight at me. In his gloved hand, he held a bouquet of balloons, red, blue, yellow, each floating as though freshly inflated. My heart thudded. I stared. He nodded once deliberately. Then he approached, stepping onto the asphalt in rubber-soled shoes that made no sound. I hit the horn, the shriek echoing off the empty highway. He didn't flinch. He tilted his head, as if amused, and held the balloons aloft. I flicked on my brights. His face glowed like a porcelain doll's under the harsh light. Then I hissed through the open window. "What do you want?" He raised one balloon, a bright red one that pulsed in the darkness. He tapped it. The latex bulged breath-like, then contracted with a soft thump. I yanked the car door shut. The clown pressed a hand to the glass fingertips, splayed paint, fracturing like old porcelain. He tapped again. The balloon thumped once more. Fumbled with the lock hard hammering. The clown's grin stretched impossibly, the painted edges cracking. I slammed the door locked, shoved the car into drive, and sped off, tires screaming on the hot asphalt. I didn't breathe until I was 10 miles away, headlights sweeping past an abandoned gas station. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, the highway was empty. No clown, no balloons, just the night stretching on. I tried to shrug it off as sleep deprivation, but the image haunted me. Balloons bobbing in the dark, that wide grin, the hollow eyes. That weekend, I kept the lights on. I slept with the TV tuned to static, the white noise comforting. I didn't answer late calls from my roommates asking why I was evasive. I avoided looking out windows after dark. On Monday night, I worked to the diner. At 11:53 p.m., I cleared the last table and stepped outside for a cigarette break. The night air had cooled slightly. Across the street, I saw him again, standing in the diner's parking lot. The same clown, same balloons, same tilt of his head. My cigarette fell from my fingers. He strode closer, balloons drifting above him like captive planets. I dropped the butt and crushed it under my heel. "Balloons," he said, voice hollow and dry. "Choose one." I shook my head. "I don't." He held out a single yellow balloon on an orange ribbon. The yellow latex pulsed as if it had a heartbeat. Just one, he whispered. Pick. My skin crawled. I backed away until my shoulder hit the diner's brick wall. He advanced slow and inexorable until he was less than 3 feet away. I stared at that balloon so vibrant under the sodium lamp glow, almost beautiful. You'll thank me, he crooned. I closed my eyes and willed myself to move, but my body refused. When I opened them, I saw something moving just behind his shoulder shapes, shifting in the gloom. I blinked. The shapes were people-blurred figures huddled at the edge of the lot. Each held a balloon identical to the one the clown held. Their clothes were tattered, their faces, pale eyes dead. I stumbled back, panic rising in my throat. Who are they? I croaked. His grin widened, red paint cracking like old wood. Friends, he said softly. They needed rides too. I realized the figures reached out to me, their balloons dipping toward the ground as though offering themselves. Their thin, skeletal fingers extended, brushing against the night air. I backed around the corner of the diner, heart pounding. The clown strode after me, bobbing balloons trailing. One balloon, he repeated, and you'll see them again. I tore out my phone and dialed 911, my fingers trembling. 911. What's... The line went dead. I held the phone to my ear. Nothing but dial tone. When I looked up, the figures had moved closer. 3 steps, then 2, then 1, each silent. Each balloon lifting them slightly off the ground. Their eyes bore into me, empty and pleading. I screamed and bolted toward my car back at the cafe. My legs pumped hard image of the clown frozen in my mind. I yanked open the door, cuffed my seatbelt, and fumbled for the keys. Through the windshield, I saw him already there, balloons framing him like a grotesque halo. He pressed a hand to the glass and tapped twice, thump, thump. My keys dropped. I snapped my head back. When I looked again, he held out both hands empty. The balloons had drifted off upward into the starless sky. The night was silent, vacant. I threw the car into drive and tore away tires skidding. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment. I double-locked the door, slid the deadbolt home, and shoved a chair beneath the doorknob. I sat in the dark waiting, listening for the soft thump, thump of balloon impact against glass. But nothing came. Over the next week, I moved into a friend's spare room, refusing to stay alone. But even there at night, I heard a distant thump that echoed in my chest. I'd jolt awake, heart racing, certain the clown stood at the window with his balloons. Finally, I called in sick to both jobs and packed a bag. At dawn, I drove until the city skyline swallowed the horizon. I checked into a motel under a fake name. I locked the door, set my phone to do not disturb, and stayed close to the ground floor. No windows near my room number. Last night, at 3:03 a.m., I woke to the thumping again. I lay frozen, listening. The sound came from the parking lot outside, rhythmic and crisp. Thump, thump, thump. I peered through the curtains. In the dim glow of the street lamp, I saw him tall, motionless, holding balloons that pulsed like watchful eyes. The balloons were red tonight, and they drifted in unison. I slid my phone beneath the door, Emergency Services 911 on speed dial. I clenched the receiver tight. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the balloons all struck the window in perfect unison. Thump, thump, thump. The glass rattled. The clown's grin split wider until it filled the pane. Then the balloons floated away, vanishing into the night sky, and he stepped back into the darkness. I waited until dawn crept across the parking lot, and he was gone. But I know he'll return. The balloons always come back. I still haven't answered the phone. I found the painting in the back room of Grady's Antiques, a cramped space filled with dusty trunks and tarnished silver. It was half hidden behind a tarnished mirror, the canvas face down, and the frame warped with age. Something about its weight pulled me closer, urging me to lift it. When I did, the back of the canvas crackled like old skin, and I shivered despite the summer heat. I flipped it over and froze. The portrait depicted a clown seated on a crimson velvet chaise, its limbs impossibly thin, the joints knotted like cracked porcelain. Its costume was ivory white with crimson ruffles at the wrists and collar. On its face, a grotesque grin split its cheeks from ear to ear lips, stretching unnaturally high to reveal rows of pointed teeth. The eyes were the worst black voids, so deep they seemed to swallow the dim lamplight in the room. I blinked. The eyes stared back. "An odd piece," said Grady, his voice creaking like the house itself. He appeared behind me, fingers tapping the counter. "Came in from Cleveland last week. Owner said he found it abandoned in an attic." He smiled, thin and mirthless. "Think you'd like it?" My heart hammered. I closed the painting and shook my head. "It's disturbing." I tried to hand it back, but my fingers trembled, and the edge of the canvas cut my palm. I jerked it away, wincing as pain bloomed. "It's yours if you want it," Grady said, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "No charge." I left, with the painting tucked awkwardly under my arm, the clown's grin following me through the crowded streets. By the time I reached home, dusk had stretched long shadows across my apartment's wooden floorboards. I set the frame in my living room propped against the wall and leaned back panting. My hand throbbed. That night, I dreamed of porcelain hands reaching out through black voids, dragging me into an endless funhouse of mirrors. I woke at 3:07 a.m. to the sound of faint laughter, soft guffaws echoing from the living room. I pressed my ear against the bedroom door and heard it again, one slow, wet chuckle that ended abruptly. I flicked on the hallway light and crept toward the living room. The painting hung on the wall now, though I was certain I'd left it on the floor. My blood ran cold. In the dim glow, the clown's grin seemed whiter lips, more blood red. Its head had tilted slightly to one side, as though studying me. I swallowed hard. "Hello?" My voice was small. No answer. The chuckle hadn't repeated. I forced myself to approach. When I got close enough to see the glossy surface of the clown's eyes, my reflection stared back, eyes wide, heart hammering. I reached out to touch the frame, and the surface rippled like disturbed water. My fingertips brushed the glass, and I jerked back, gasping. I squinted. The painting was static toy-like, every brushstroke frozen in oil. I turned to leave, but the painting's eyes followed me. By the time I reached my bedroom, my skin felt crawly, as though insects skittered beneath my skin. Morning arrived in a haze. I tried to focus on work emails, calls, errands, but every time I glanced at the painting behind me, its silhouette in my peripheral vision twisted and shifted. By noon, I couldn't concentrate. I decided to store it in the closet, at least until I figured out what it was doing to me. I wrestled it into the narrow closet, watching its shape vanish into gloom. When I emerged, I thought I heard a faint scraping like tiny nails against wood. I held my breath. Nothing more. That afternoon, A friend called about dinner. I laughed weakly. Sorry, can't. Something came up. I hung up and flopped onto the couch, staring at the closet door. The scratching came again, faster, more urgent, as if from inside. My pulse raced. I ran to the closet, yanked open the door, and nothing was there except the rolled-up painting and empty hangers. I grabbed the canvas and fled into the street, carrying it like a wounded animal. I drove to my parents' house in the next town, heart pounding as I rang the bell. My mother answered, relieved to see me. "What's wrong?" she asked. I explained in breathless fragments, and she guided me inside. I left the painting in their garage. When I returned home, the apartment felt spacious, almost empty. Light streamed through the windows, and silence held the rooms like a blanket. That night, I slept soundly. At 2:59 a.m., I woke with a start. Something had tapped my shoulder. I whipped around in the pitch dark. Nothing. I peered through the crack beneath my bedroom door. A pale gloved hand, its nails long and black, reached through the gap. My breath hitched, and I yanked the door shut, locking it, heart racing. I pressed my ear against the wood. The scratching began again. Then, the unmistakable tinkle of a distant calliope, so soft, I thought I imagined it. The air turned frigid. Through the keyhole, I caught a glimpse of white makeup and black voids meeting me in the dark. A slow, mocking clap echoed once, twice, then faded. I scrambled for my phone, my hand shaking so badly I dropped it. The screen shattered. I pressed the broken shards to the door, too terrified to try and dial help. I stayed huddled until dawn. When pale light seeped through my curtains, the scratching stopped. The hand vanished. I bolted to the garage, but the painting was gone. In its place lay a single golden key on the floor. Antique ornate, its teeth twisted into a jagged smile. I pocketed the key without thinking. I've kept it ever since. Now, every few nights, I wake to the calliope music tinkling outside my window, and I find that key resting on my bedside table as though it walked there on its own. I don't know what it opens or why the clown follows me, but I can't bear another night in that apartment with the painting stalking my shadows. I intend to find that attic in Cleveland, wherever it is, and lock the laughing portrait away for good. If I ever find the lock, it fits, maybe I'll be free. Until then, I hold the key, and I pray the laughter doesn't start again. I used to take customer service calls at the telecom center from dusk until dawn. The graveyard shift suited me, quiet, no boss, breathing down my neck, and overtime pay. I'd settled into a rhythm answer, about 50 calls an hour, help people reset routers or transfer lines, and then clock out at sunrise, blinking into daylight like a mole emerging from its burrow. One Tuesday night, I checked the date later. It was June 12th. I answered a number I didn't recognize. My script began. "Thank you for calling Northern Link Communications. This is Jenna speaking. How can I help you?" Instead of the usual static or heavy breathing, I heard faint carnival music, accordion, and calliope warped, as if playing underwater. Then a child's voice whispered, "Is anyone there?" I frowned. "Sir, are you calling about your service?" A low chuckle. Then, issued the voice of a clown, thin and brittle, like dried leaves scraping together. "Yes, I'm calling to check on my line." I glanced at my screen. "Unknown caller. What's the problem?" He paused, and I heard him shuffle in what sounded like oversized shoes. I can't reach home. Which address? I asked, pressing the open line button. He sighed as if disappointed. There is no home. My skin prickled. Sir, I need an address to route your signal. He chuckled again. Never mind the signal. The accordion sputtered. I need someone to talk to. I glanced at my headset mic, relieved. I can talk. He cleared his throat. Good. His voice turned playful sing-song knock-knock. I frowned. Excuse me. Knock knock, he repeated his tone, sliding into something jagged. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Who's there? I played along. Odd callers needed humor. Boo. I suppressed a sigh. Boo-hoo. You cried when you heard my laughter. The chuckle resumed louder, and now I could hear kids giggling behind him. My hair stood on end. Sir, is everything okay at your end? Silence. Then the click of a rotary dial, as if someone twisted a dial backward. The call crackled. The display blinked. Can you hear me? I asked. Yes, he said, voice distorted. But do you hear them? I strained my ears. There it was, faint high-pitched humming, like dozens of children humming a nursery rhyme in unison. The words were indistinct, but rhythmically warped. Ring around the rosies. I swallowed. Sir, if you're having trouble with the service, I can send a technician. He laughed low and hollow. I don't need a technician. I need you. How can I help? He paused, then said, Tell me a story. My heart skipped. A story? Yes, scary. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I'm not trained for storytelling. He sighed with impatience. Then improvise. The music dialed up the call, spinning with carnival tunes. Make it about me. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. I wasn't on call for bedtime stories. All right, I said. Once upon a midnight, a lonely clown wandered the earth. I spoke, weaving a flimsy tale. A clown who lost his laugh, sought an audience to reclaim his joy, trapping listeners in his telephone line to keep them company forever. As I spoke, the humming behind him grew louder, children chanting around me in a rising chorus that seeped through my headset, making the office lights flicker. My coworkers glanced up, frowning. The music stuttered. When I reached the climax, where the clown finds happiness only by trading the freedom of each listener, I whispered. And so he keeps dialing, looking for the next voice to fill the silence. Silence fell at the other end. No carnival music, no humming children. Only my own ragged breathing. Finally, the clown said bravo. His voice was soft, sincere. I exhaled. Thank you, he said. That was just what I needed. I blinked. Relief flooded me. I'm glad. Should I transfer you to voicemail? He chuckled. No need. I'm done. Good night, sir. I clicked the end call button and leaned back, letting out a shaky laugh. But the office speaker crackled to life with static. Then that same carnival tune. My shift manager stood in the doorway, frowning. End of the night wrap-up, she called. I tapped my headset light off. Around me, the phones glowed with red lights in standby mode. No active lines. I shut down my station and walked toward the exit, only to see the manager's face pale. She backed away. I followed her gaze to the row of headsets. One was off its stand, dangling. The call indicator blinked. The line was active. I picked up the headset. The display read, private line. I tapped the receiver. Hello, I whispered. No voice. Only the carnival music, slower now, a languid waltz. I pressed N twice, but the line stayed open. My pulse thundered as I pressed the mute button, then flipped the phone face down. I raced to the manager's office. There's a call on my line I can't end, I hissed. She whipped her head around, uncomprehending. all lines are down for the night. I shook my head, mine still ringing. She grabbed her keys and rushed back. We sprinted to my desk. Every single line was dark. Headsets hung perfectly still. The phone in question was gone. The base sat empty. I backed away. My eyes darted across the room, then settled on my personal bag slung under the desk. My phone buzzed through the fabric. I yanked it out and flipped it open. No missed calls. No new messages. But the lock screen had changed a close-up photo of my face, wide eyes, sweat on my brow, from earlier when I told my story. The timestamp read 3:33 a.m. A notification popped up, sweet dreams. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, screen shattering. The display flickered, and I saw for a heartbeat a pale clown face filling the screen, grin stretching impossibly wide before the light died entirely. I fled that night, my shift manager too, stunned to stop me. I handed in my resignation the next morning, unable to look at another telephone. Now, every midnight, I wake to my ringtone playing that warped carnival calliope. Even when my phone is off or airplane mode, I'll answer, sometimes trembling, and whisper, "Hello," only to hear the distant, brittle laugh. Thank you for the story. I never tell stories anymore. I never intended to drive that old back road at night, but the detour sign was so weathered and vague, I convinced myself it must be the shorter way. My car's headlights swept over broken asphalt and overgrown weeds as I followed the arrow to Millstone Bridge. The night was unnaturally still, the air damp with mist curling off the creek below. I rounded a bend and saw him before I saw the bridge. A clown standing at the edge of the road, illuminated by my headlights. He wore a tattered pastel suit, faded stripes of pink and teal, and a bow tie so oversized it blocked half his chest. His face was chalk-white cheeks painted with red spirals, and his eyes glowed with a feral yellow light. In his left hand, he held a battered metal lunchbox. In his right, a single flickering lantern. My heart clenched. It was late past midnight, and I was miles from anywhere. I slowed the car. "Need a ride?" he called, in a voice that crackled like static. I glanced at my gas gauge, almost empty, and at the looming bridge. The wooden planks looked rotten, threatening to collapse under even the slightest weight. I exhaled. Yes, please." He stepped aside, lantern held high. His clown shoes tapped on the pavement in uneven rhythm. As I rolled the window down, a nauseating mix of stale popcorn and rust hit me. "Bridge gives out," he warned, voice low. "Car safe here." He pointed to my dashboard. I put the car in park and stepped out the cold night air, biting through my jacket. "Thanks," I said, fumbling to lock the door. He didn't smile. His painted grin hung frozen uncanny. "Follow me," he said, flipping open the metal lunchbox. Inside lay a single corn dog, half eaten, the wooden stick stained dark. The lantern's glow seemed to intensify over it. I hesitated. "I'm hungry," he said, as though reading my mind. "Here." He extended the lunchbox. Something about it made my skin crawl. Yet my stomach growled, betraying me. I reached in, lifting the corn dog. It felt ice cold, the meat leathery. I withdrew it and bit once. My teeth sank through the skin, and a wave of revulsion washed over me. There was no meat, just coarse sawdust, lined with thin black hair. I spat it out, gagging. The clown's lantern swung, spotlighting my face. "Not for eating," he whispered, "for checking." "Checking," I croaked. He closed the lunchbox and snapped it shut. Time's wrong. He pointed to the lantern. The flame inside flickered backward, shrinking instead of growing, then snapping out entirely. Darkness swallowed him. Only the moonlit road remained. I rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, he stood on the bridge, itself lantern relit, beckoning. I stepped forward. Something compelled me. Fog slithered across the boards, curling around my ankles. The clown's lantern cast long shadows on the river below, turning the water into a black mirror. From its depths came a soft, skittering whisper, like nails dragging across stone. He held out his hand. Come, there's someone you need to see. I reached out, heart racing, and took his gloved hand. The moment our fingers touched, a jolt like plunging into icy water shot up my arm. I gasped, stumbling. He steadied me with ease. We walked across the bridge. Each plank creaked ominously under our weight, some cracking and sagging as though ready to break. I fixed my gaze on the far bank, determined to escape this nightmare. Instead, we arrived at an iron gate that hadn't been visible from the road. The gate opened onto a small island midstream, as if the bridge had been built solely to reach it. On the island stood a solitary carousel, its paint-peeling horses frozen mid-gallop, their glass eyes cloudy. The clown led me between the silent beasts to the center pole, where a chipped ticket booth sat. Inside, a figure slumped a child no more than 10 dressed in party clothes, face buried in their arms. I sprinted forward. Hey, I called, touching the child's shoulder. They flinched, turned eyes empty, tear-streaked, and gleaming with terror. Their mouth hung open in a silent scream. The clown's laughter rang out behind me, tinnily and cruel. He fell through the planks. His mother never knew what happened. I whirled on him. What did you do to him? He shrugged bellflowers on his lapels, jangling. Nothing really. He wanted a thrill. I just gave him one. I looked back at the child. Their face was warped, as if melting in the damp air. Suddenly, hundreds of tiny hands exploded from the ground around the ticket booth, each pale and skeletal, grasping at my legs. I tried to pull free, but the hands clutched tighter, nails rasping against my boots. I screamed. The clown stepped forward and tapped the child's shoulder. The hands withdrew, instantly disappearing beneath the mossy earth. The child dissolved into dust, drifting away on the breeze. The clown turned back to me, face illuminated by the lantern. Your turn, he said. I've been lonely. He swung the lunchbox open again. Inside lay my own disembodied phone, its cracked screen still lit, showing a photo of me sleeping in my bed. I stared, heart pounding. On the screen, a notification popped up. Let's play hide and seek. I dropped the phone. It shattered on the boardwalk with a sound like breaking bones. The clown's grin widened, paint cracking. Lantern light danced as the board split open beneath us, revealing a yawning black void. A clawed hand, too large for any child, shot up and snatched the phone. The clown raised his own hand. The lunchbox latch clicked shut. I backed away, legs trembling. Please, I whispered, let me go. He nodded, posture solemn. One last game. He clapped his gloved hands. The carousel behind him shuddered and creaked to life music box. Its notes warped and sour. The horses began to spin, hooves cutting the air. Find the exit before the music stops, he said. If you lose. He flicked the lantern. It burst into backward motion flames, sucking light in. You'll stay and be the next attraction." The music swelled. I turned and bolted, leaping from plank to plank as the carousel's tune warped faster. The bridge groaned, the lantern's backward flame flickering in pursuit like a second moon. I reached the road's edge, sprinted past the clown without looking back, and dove into my car. I fumbled with the door handle as the music slowed to a crawl. My fingers slipped. From the darkness, the clown's hollow voice whispered, "Time's up." I yanked the door open, slammed inside, and locked it. The engine roared to life. As I sped away, I saw him standing at the bridge entrance, lantern, dead lunchbox closed. Painted grin fixed in eternal mockery. When I looked ahead, the back road had vanished, replaced by the highway leading home. My gas gauge now read full. My phone miraculously buzzed. In the console, no cracks, notifications, all cleared. But when I checked the gallery, I found a new photo. Me, panicked eyes pressed to my steering wheel. The clown, looming at the shoulder, stained smile, half fading into mist. I deleted it. Gone. Yet sometimes at night, I dream of that bridge. Its boards splintering, the carousel's horses screaming. And always, at the end of the dream, a lantern's light retreats backward, and that painted clown voice beckons, "Play with me." I never drive that road again. But they say Millstone Bridge still stands waiting for the next daredevil. And I know long after my gaslight flickers, he'll be there lantern in hand smiling. I never thought an invitation could haunt me, but then I never thought I'd be the kid who vanished at my own birthday party. It was my 12th birthday. I was ecstatic. After all, few things thrilled me more than the circus-themed extravaganza my parents had planned. A local party barn, bright banners, and best of all, the clown. Marvin the Magnificent, his handlers called him, but to us kids he was simply Clowny. He'd walked in with juggling clubs and a squeaky rubber chicken, his face painted pure white features, exaggerated in dusty blues and reds. I remember studying the confident sweep of his lavender ruffle collar, the way he bowed theatrically, tossing confetti into the air. "Make a wish." "Birthday boy," he yelled. Bouncing on one foot, I blew out my candles, the entire room erupting in cheers. Laughter echoed off the rafters. I felt like the most important person alive. Later, I wandered off into the barn's old hayloft, while the other kids chased balloons. It was dim, the only light filtering through slats in the walls, dust motes drifting lazily. I wasn't scared. Haylofts were magic places for a kid. I heard footsteps above me, the soft rubber taps of oversized clown shoes. Looking for something, a familiar voice asked. I looked up to see Clowny peering down, one painted eyebrow raised. He held a single black and white spiral balloon in one gloved hand. The pattern undulated hypnotically in the low light. Just exploring," I stammered, climbing the ladder. He smiled that broad grin, two wide teeth unnaturally white against the black-painted corners. "I have something special for you," he said, extending the balloon. "Your very own souvenir." I reached out curious. The moment my fingers brushed the string, the world tilted. My birthday music slowed, the shouts from below warped into whispers. My chest tightened. Clowny leaned closer. "Would you like to play a game?" "Okay," I said, enthralled by the spiral's motion. "Good," he whispered. "Let's hide." Before I could protest, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and guided me to a dark corner behind dusty crates. The hayloft door thudded shut. My heart pounded. As I tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. "Shh," he hissed. "Don't make a sound." pressed my back against the wall, the spiral balloon bobbing between us. Beyond the door, I could hear kids calling, "Where's Alex?" my name. Panic squeezed my lungs. They'd come to find me, my parents would worry. Clowny rocked the balloon gently. "They'll never find you up here," he murmured. "You're my special guest now." I opened my mouth to scream, but his painted lips curled into that ridiculous smile, and he placed one finger against his lips. My voice stuck. Below, I heard the barn managers shout, "Alex! Alex! Where are you?" My breath came in ragged whispers. I watched the spiral twist. The black coils seemed to stretch into infinite tunnels. My mind fogged every thought, dissolving into the swirl. Clowny plucked something from his collar. A battered pocket watch, its face cracked and hands spinning backward. He clicked it open. "Time's up. When I say," he said, voice low, "right now." He snapped it shut. A thunderous click echoed through the loft. The spiral balloon snapped taut and exploded in a shower of black rubber petals that drifted around me like confetti. The world went white hot. I clutched my ears, stumbling backward. When I opened my eyes, the clamoring voices were gone. The barn was silent. The spiral balloon petals drifted to the dusty floor, curling like dead leaves. Clowny's grin loomed above me. He pointed downward. "This way," he said. I descended the ladder, terrified and dizzy. The hayloft exit corridor stretched longer than I remembered, lights flickering overhead. I followed him, entranced by that grin. At the barn's main door, I expected to see my parents in frantic relief. Instead, the door swung open onto an endless parade ground flooded with mid-afternoon sunlight. A crowd of clowns stood waiting, dozens of them in mismatched suits, their painted smiles identical, eyes glittering behind streaks of makeup. Some juggled odd objects, plastic dolls, cracked teacups, while others performed silent mime routines. Clowny guided me to center stage, a circular patch of cracked concrete. He handed me the spiral balloon stem, its pattern still intact despite the bursts of petals. "Welcome to the show," he announced, voice amplified into an eerie echo. The sea of clowns applauded in unison, their hands clacking like castanets. My heart thundered. I tried to run, but felt rooted to the spot. The clowns edged forward, forming a widening circle. I realized I wasn't just the audience, I was the attraction. Clowny raised the pocket watch. 3 minutes, he intoned. Then the grand finale. A wave of nausea hit me. I stumbled, eyes flicking to the clowns pressing in. One reached out, pale fingers, nearly touching my shoulder, brittle like a doll's. I yanked away, fumbling with the balloon stem, trying to pull free, but it felt glued to my palm. Time sped up. I fumbled for something, anything, to defend myself. The clowns closed in. Their painted smiles gleamed, teeth sharp as shards of bone. The world blurred at the edges. The sun overhead fractured into jagged prisms. 2 minutes. My lungs burned. I saw the faint outline of a red and white ticket booth in the distance, the carnival entrance from my dreams. Beyond it, the barn where the party still raged, oblivious to my absence. I could hear muffled laughter, the faint creak of the hayloft ladder, my own name calling. 1 minute. I lunged toward the ticket booth, the clown's hands brushing my arms, tugging at my clothes. They whispered, "Stay," in 1,000 ragged voices. 30 seconds. I dove inside the booth, slamming the tiny door. The clowns' faces filled the window, grinning. I scrambled for the shattered window ledge, climbed out, and ran. The parade ground stretched as far as I could see, the clowns giving chase in a carnival of nightmares. At full sprint, I vaulted over the barn's side fence, crashing into my backyard. My parents' voices drifted through the open window. "Where is he?" Then a distant cry. "Alex." "There you are," relief crashed over me. I collapsed on the grass, panting, blinded by tears. My parents lifted me inside, hugging me tight. I glanced down at my hand, empty. No balloon stem, no pocket watch, just a smear of black dust across my palm. I never saw Clowny again, or his legion, but every day afterward, I found spiral balloons in odd corners, tied to my bicycle, floating just above my bed, pinned to my backpack. Each time I would pick it up, seeing that coil, black and white, draw me in a siren call to another realm. I learned to pop them as fast as I could, but sometimes the pop never came. Sometimes the balloon deflated on its own, releasing a breath of chilly air that whispered my name in the dark. And on those nights, I dream of that endless parade ground, the smiling faces closing in. I don't know how to stop the invitations. Maybe they never stop. I should have known better than to take that job. I'd just moved into the old Victorian at the edge of town, a bargain too good to pass up. The landlord, a gaunt man with jaundiced eyes, offered me the basement as my studio. Bright lights, plenty of space, and privacy. "No one will bother you," he'd assured me, except the occasional curious neighbor. I was a portrait artist, and the solitude promised uninterrupted work. The basement was a painter's dream. High ceilings, rough brick walls, and a single small window near the ceiling that let in a sliver of daylight. I set up my easel under a bare bulb, laid out my oils and brushes, and got to work on my next commission. All month, I'd been painting Marlene's portrait, the matriarch of the Harper family, her stern lines and proud chin. It felt good to return to something familiar after months of freelancing odd jobs. On my first night down there, I founded a face drawn in charcoal on one of the brick walls. Rough spidery lines formed a wide grin, dark hollow eyes, and a bulbous nose. I frowned. It hadn't been there when I moved in. The landlord swore the basement had been sealed for years. I grabbed a rag and wiped at the drawing. The charcoal smudged but wouldn't fade. No matter how hard I scrubbed, the clown's grin only deepened, as if the wall itself was breathing life into it. Goosebumps prickled my arms. I backed away. "Great," I muttered, wiping sweat from my brow. "Just what I needed a roommate I can't kick out." The next day, the face was gone, no trace of charcoal or scuff marks. I sighed with relief and chalked it up to my imagination, exhausted by late nights and flickering light. But that relief was short-lived. On the third night, I heard laughter. A single soft chuckle from somewhere close behind. My brush hovered over the canvas as I froze. The sound floated through the stale air, childlike, then twisted like metal grinding. I set my brush down, heart pounding, and turned. The basement was empty, except for my canvas and the easel. I climbed the creaking stairs, 2 at a time, slammed the trapdoor shut, and locked it. I slept fitfully on the couch upstairs, dreaming of painted faces dissolving into shadows. The following morning, curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the trap door and descended. My flashlight's beam cut through the gloom. The walls were blank, save for one patch of reference paint where I'd made a quick swatch last week. I felt foolish scanning every brick, but found nothing resembling that smile. Shrugging, I gathered my brushes and headed upstairs to work on Marlene's eyes. But I was only 2 strokes in when a knock sounded at the door. It was the landlord smiling thinly. "Evening, Mr. Duloc," he said, voice oily. I came to check the fuse box. Heard of some flickering lights. I forced a smile. "Thanks, I'll be fine. I'm an artist, I don't burn through electricity like others." He cocked his head. "Artist, eh? What kind of painting?" "Portraits," I replied. He gave me a look that felt like a glare. I've never seen a portrait of a clown fetch much. He walked away, keys jingling. His words stuck in my mind as I climbed back down. When I reached the basement, the painted grin was back, only larger, stretching nearly 4 feet across the wall. The charcoal had returned in thick, layered strokes, as though someone pressed so hard the dust embedded itself in the mortar. My breath stuttered. I squatted to inspect it. The lines were uneven, jagged, alive. I raised my hand to touch it and recoiled as the grin spoke. "Nice work," it rasped. The voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. I stumbled backward, knocking over my easel. The canvas fluttered to the floor, paint splattering like blood. "Who's there?" I choked. Silence then. That soft metallic laugh again, curling around my calves and rising up my spine. I seized the flashlight and trained its beam on the wall. The grin's edges seemed to twitch, shifting slightly as if inhaling. The eye's empty black pits drifted down to follow me. I yelped, dropped the flashlight, and raced upstairs, slamming the trapdoor behind me. I slept with all the lights on, nightmares of brick walls melting into faces, of paint dripping from mouths that shouldn't speak. At dawn, I packed my bag. I couldn't stay here another minute. My heart was hammering. My head buzzed with panic. Before I left, I decided to grab my paints to at least retrieve some equipment. I unlocked the door and descended for the final time. The basement was silent sunbeams slanting through the tiny window, dust motes dancing in the air. I flicked on the overhead bulb. The grin was gone. The brick wall was pristine once more. My paints and canvases lay neatly by the corner, exactly as I left them. I let out a shaky laugh. Maybe I had lost it. Maybe I'd let fear trump reason. I told myself I'd find a new studio far from here. I turned to leave and froze. From the far wall, a small figure emerged, a little clown doll wearing a fraying satin jumpsuit of black and white diamonds. It sat on the floor, head tilted, its painted smile identical to the one on the brick. My throat closed. I backed away, slipping on a tube of oil paint that had rolled across the floor. It popped open, red paint spreading like a pooling shadow. I scrambled up, heart pounding, and fled the basement, slamming the trap door. I heard a soft scuff, then that metallic chuckle. On my way out, I passed the landlord in the hallway. He stared at me, eyes flinty. "All set?" he asked. I nodded, curtly rushed past him, avoiding his gaze. In the foyer, I saw a single balloon floating in the stairwell, black with a white grin painted on it. My pulse thundered. I grabbed it, twisted its knot, and popped it against my palm. The rubber gave way easily, as though it wanted to break. I dropped the remnants and ran for the door. The landlord shouted after me, but I didn't look back. I haven't gone back. I don't know who or what painted that grin, or why it returns when I scrub and scrub. I threw out my paint, sold the doll, changed my phone number. Yet at night, I dream of that smile stretching across every wall I've ever known. And sometimes, when I'm alone in my new studio, I swear I hear a soft cackle echoing from the corners and a single drop of red pigment landing on fresh white canvas. I should have known better. I never believed the stories about the old carnival until the night I worked security there. My name is Nina, and I was newly hired to guard the shuttered rides and empty tents of Murrow's Midnight Carnival. They said the place closed years ago after a freak accident, something about children vanishing during a clown performance. I chalked it up to small-town gossip and signed up for the extra cash. My shift began at midnight. The parking lot was bathed in moonlight gravel, crunching under my boots as I walked toward the entrance. A hand-painted sign hung on rusted chains. Come one, come all, if you dare. I saw him. I laughed nervously, clipped my flashlight to my belt, and unlocked the gates. Inside the carnival was a skeleton of its former self. Faded banners drooped over empty stalls. Weeds cracked through the pavement. The carousel's horses stood frozen on rusty poles, their colors dulled to ghostly pastels. I decided to start with a complete sweep of the grounds radio in hand. By the funhouse, I saw a single red balloon tethered to the cracked sidewalk. I picked it up. Its latex was cold and slick, as though it had been outside in a rainstorm. I glanced around, but no one else was on the grounds. I shrugged and slipped the balloon into my pocket. The funhouse door creaked on its hinges, beckoning. I pressed the button on my flashlight, and its beam wavered across the warped mirrors inside. I entered, footsteps echoing against peeling paint. The mirrors multiplied my reflection until I wasn't sure which me was real. I gave a false smile to one distorted reflection, then froze. In the mirror, directly ahead, a clown stood beside me. His suit was chalk white, trimmed with black diamonds, like a twisted Pierrot. His hair was slicked back, tar black, and his nose glowed faintly red. His mouth was fixed in a cruel grin. Heart pounding, I turned around. The hallway was empty. "Hello," he whispered, voice distant, as though traveling through a long corridor. I swung my flashlight beam around, but saw nothing. When I turned back to the mirror, the clown was gone. I exhaled slowly, laughing at myself for being jumpy. Still, I felt uneasy. I decided to leave. Funhouse terror wasn't worth writing home about. At the door, I bumped into a small mirror, nearly falling. I caught myself and scanned its surface. The clown's face filled the frame, pressing in close lips, curling. I yelped and stumbled backward. The clown's image flickered, then vanished, leaving only my pale, terrified reflection. I ran back outside into the cool night. My heart thudded like a jackhammer. I needed fresh air. In the main midway, I searched for any sign of trespassers. None. The perimeter fence glowed under the moon. As I passed the carousel, I heard a child's laughter, soft, distant echoing off the empty stalls. I froze. The amusement park was closed. There should have been no one here. I followed the laughter to a locked ticket booth. The window was shattered shards of glass on the counter. A boy's red balloon, identical to the one I picked up, floated inside. Then I saw footprints, small, muddy, leading from the booth toward the tented big top. I grabbed my radio. "Base, this is Nina. I think we have intruders near the big top." No answer. I took a deep breath and crept toward the massive striped tent. Its entrance flaps were tied open, billowing slightly. The laughter drifted in, punctuated by the distant squeal of an unseen roller coaster. I stepped inside. The smell of stale popcorn and rot drifted around me. The floor was littered with deflated balloons and broken clown noses. At the center of the ring stood the clown from the mirrors, illuminated by a lone spotlight. His gloves were stained a dark, unidentifiable red. He turned toward me, slow and deliberate. "Thank you for joining the performance," he said, voice smooth as oil. "We've been waiting." I swallowed, trying to force words out. "I'm security," I stammered. "There's no one here." He bowed, one hand sweeping the ring. "But there are always guests, my dear. They never leave." He stepped closer, and I saw the patchwork stitching on his lips like they'd been sewn shut and forced into a smile. My flashlight flickered. I raised it, desperate to keep him at bay. When the beam steadied, I noticed shapes emerging from the shadows, children in clown costumes, their eyes hollow and wide. They circled me, holding balloons, whispering my name in unison. Nina. Nina. I backed away until my shoulders hit the tense fabric. The big top seemed to constrict around me. The sound of distant carnival music swelling a warped carousel melody that scraped against my eardrums. The clown leader of this macabre troupe tilted his head. "Let us show you our finale," he said. He reached into his pocket, producing a deck of playing cards. He flicked one into the air. The Jack of Hearts, its edges stained dark. It fluttered down and landed at my feet. Then he tossed another Queen of Spades. Then King of Clubs. Each card landed in a neat path leading to a massive black top hat in the center of the ring. I noticed movement inside the hat. A pale hand knuckles, white as bone, gripping its rim. My breath caught. Before I could react, every child clown dropped their balloons. The strings whipped upward, pulling them skyward with inhuman speed. They let out silent screams, tears streaking their powdered faces. Within seconds, they hung limp-collared by the latex torsos, stretching grotesquely until they snapped and disappeared into the night sky, leaving only their balloons to drift away like fragments of a screaming dream. I turned to run, but the clown stood in my path, grin widening until it looked like a slash across his face. "Your ticket, please," he crooned, bowing deeply. My shaking hand found the red balloon in my pocket. Limp now, its color drained. I held it out like a desperate offering. He took it, inspecting the faded latex. Then he nodded solemnly and popped it with two gloved fingers. The sound reverberated through the tent, and the world went black. When I came to, I was outside beneath the cold, indifferent moon. The carnival gates were locked again. My flashlight lay shattered at my feet, its batteries scattered like spent shells. I checked my pocket. No balloon. No cards. Only a smear of red on my palm that washed off in the morning dew. I quit that night. They never found my flashlight or explained the strange footprints around the ticket booth, and I refused to believe the carnival reopened. But late at night, when the wind is right, I hear a music box wilt and crack, and I swear I feel something brush past me like tattered velvet, smelling faintly of popcorn and decay. If you ever see a red balloon tied to an abandoned fence, walk away. Don't look back, because sometimes a ticket never expires. I still remember the day I first saw him. It started innocuously enough. I was 8 years old, riding my bike down the gravel road that led out of our sleepy town. The sun had just begun its descent, casting long, trembling shadows across the fields. That's when I heard the distant squeak of a bicycle bell, bright and cheery, against the hollow hush of dusk. I glanced over my shoulder. No one was there. I shrugged it off and pedaled faster, heart fluttering with the thrill of the chase. I'd always loved that stretch of road wind in my hair, the promise of adventure. But that evening, something felt off. The air hung heavy, as if every blade of grass was watching. I slowed down, listening. The bell rang again, closer now, but still no rider. By the old maple tree, its trunk gnarled like arthritic fingers, I stopped. I turned in a full circle, expecting to see someone emerge from the shadows. Instead, I saw him, the clown. He sat on the edge of the tree's roots. Legs crossed, his crisp white makeup stark against the dirt. His suit was a jigsaw of bright colors. Electric blue flame, orange, lemon yellow, so vivid that my eyes twitched. He had a crimson nose, the size of a plum, and a ridiculous painted smile that stretched from ear to ear. In his lap rested a single red balloon, its string looped neatly around his gloved finger. "Hello," he said, voice soft and slow, like syrup sliding off a spoon. I swallowed. "Hi." He tipped his oversized hat, striped red and white, revealing hair dyed a sickly shade of green, frizzy and wild. "You're late," he whispered, though there was no urgency in his tone. Just expectation. "Late," I echoed. "Yes," as he nodded solemnly. "Our show has already begun." He rose to his feet. The balloon floated above him, bobbing as if hungry. "But don't worry. There's always room for one more." I wanted to laugh. How preposterous. A clown inviting me to a show at this deserted spot. But the world had shifted. The setting sun suddenly felt like a spotlight, and I, the unwilling performer. My throat tightened. What show? His painted grin, widened teeth glinting unnaturally. He leaned in close. "The one where you disappear." I stumbled back, heart hammering. "Disappear?" He spun the balloon on the tip of his finger, eyes glinting beneath the harsh fringe of his painted eyebrows. "Yes, like this." With a sudden flick of his wrist, the balloon shot into the sky, disappearing between two shifting clouds. I watched it vanish, wondering if I'd imagined the entire exchange. But I hadn't. The clown tilted his head as if listening for applause. Then he clapped slowly, deliberately. Each clap echoed through the dusk. "You see, children love magic," he said, voice low. "They come running for the wonder, but sometimes wonder runs them over." I took a step back, boots crunching on gravel. I should go." "Not yet," he intoned and pointed to the dark hollow between the maples. I squinted and saw, or thought I saw, dozens of balloons bobbing there. Blue, green, yellow, each tethered to a thin, pale hand jutting from the earth. The skin looked almost translucent in the dim light, bone white and dead. My blood ran cold. "What are those?" I whispered. He smiled. "These are old tickets, patrons from last season." He bent down, plucked a yellow balloon from the ground and handed it to me. The moment the ribbon touched my fingers, I felt cold seep into my bones, as if I'd been plunged into icy water. Images flickered behind my eyes. Laughter turned to screams. Bright lights morphing into glare. A carousel of faces distorting in pain. I screamed and dropped the balloon. It popped with a sound like a gunshot, and the hollow hands retreated into the earth as though burned by its bang. I covered my ears, tears streaming, gasping for air. The clown stood tall, silent. The red balloon from earlier descended, coming to rest gently in his free hand. "Now it's time," he said. I turned and ran. My bicycle lay against the tree trunk. I threw myself on it and pedaled wildly, fist whipping at the air to keep my balance. Behind me, I heard the squeak of that bell again, faster, more insistent, racing me down the road. My heart exploded in my chest. I dared not look back yet. I could feel those painted eyes watching, following in the gathering gloom. I burst into our yard as night swallowed the sky. The front door slammed behind me, and I collapsed against it, panting. I blinked up at the porch light. I must be safe. Must be. But when I turned around, there he was. The clown stood beneath the yellow glow face, cast in sickly light. He held the red balloon high above his head. His painted smile was grotesquely wide. And then, with a deflated sigh, he let go. The balloon drifted into the darkness. The clown whispered almost kindly, "See you next season, child." It took me a moment to realize I was alone. No clown stood on the porch. No echo of a bicycle bell. Only the stillness of midnight and the faint tug at my pocket. I unzipped my jeans and found the red balloon small and limp tied around my keychain. I never spoke of that night. As I grew older, the memory twisted into something I didn't dare revisit. But every summer, when the evenings stretch long and the cicadas hum like distant engines, I swear, I hear a bicycle bell behind me. I feel cold fingertips brush my shoulder, and sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I see a flash of white makeup and green hair, and I know the show is just beginning again. Hello everyone, I'm ZiBo, and thank you so much for watching until the very end of this video. I truly hope today's stories brought you some enjoyable moments. If you found them helpful, don't forget to leave a comment down below. Every bit of your feedback helps me improve and continue creating quality content. See you in the next video.